Today, we will hear from white people telling the truth about how racism is passed down and encouraged in their community. Check it out.
It sucks to be a white American. Now hold on, give me a chance, let me explain. I want you to think of the kind of person who would put on a White Lives Matter sticker on the back of their Ford pickup. Why do they do that? Is it all racism? Well, yeah, but I think it goes a lot deeper than that. White Americans basically have no culture, not in the same way we see other people. And we white people, we know this inherently, and it scares us. We know we have our regional cultures, our cities, our sports teams, and families all give us our regional culture, but being white basically means nothing, or generally at least nothing positive. White people throughout American history are almost always seen on the side of the oppressors. Not all white people, but most of us. And this sucks to learn. It's even harder to internalize. And it's why white people usually don't accept this, because it makes us feel a deep sense of guilt. I think it's why white people say nonsense like, I can't be racist, I have black friends. Sure, you probably don't see black people as objects, but you're refusing to accept the role our people have had in their oppression. That guilt we feel is our responsibility for the actions of our ancestors. It's why white people refuse to say that black people deserve reparation, because it admits our guilt. But black people deserve reparations. It just makes sense logically. You can sue someone for scratching your car, but black people can't sue the American government for the enslavement of their people. My people are arresting and deporting Mexican families from this country. Think about that. We are telling people that they are not allowed on the land we stole. Let's go a step further. White people stole a sacred land site from the people indigenous to this land and then carved 4 white people's faces on it, most of which were slave owners. I mean, Mount Rushmore is a place that we look at and we're like, oh, cool, giant faces. But to other people, it's a giant form of oppression. And admitting that and coming to terms with that sucks. We suck, dude. My people really and truly suck. Not all of us contributed to this oppression, but we are all a part of it. And this will mostly sound like virtue signaling. It will mostly sound like, look at how rough we are. But there is a reality to admitting this guilt and being honest with it, because white people are afraid to do this. And we're afraid to admit it because my people are weak. White people are weak. We have power we have given ourselves and put down the cultures that are stronger than us because we know that we're weak. If white Americans were oppressed the same way black, native, or Mexican American people are, we would crack like glass. Our culture and identity as white people is so meaningless that we do everything in our power to keep other people down so that we don't break from having someone else on top. I think that's why you see white Americans championing white pride, not just out of ignorance or racism, but it's because they are scared. They're scared to come to terms with their guilt, scared to admit they're wrong, and terrified to acknowledge that we may have all the societal, economic, and political power, but as a people, we are weak. But this isn't the way it has to be forever. I have hope that one day my people will finally take responsibility for what we have done. I hope that we'll collectively accept our role in the oppression of our non-white brothers and sisters and finally take action. And it will take the action of us white folks. It's not just non-white people that have to fight for their rights. It's us too fighting for them, because our cross to bear is being born white. Being born with the skin color of the oppressors means that we have to fight to be nothing like them. We're not near that right now. America is in a tumultuous stage where it very much does not feel like white people are acknowledging where they went wrong. But I want to have hope, and I refuse to accept that one day justice won't prevail. Collectively, we can all shed the shadow of oppression and share this place together.
White people, if crime statistics really mattered to us, we would be talking about white men every damn day. We as white people love to throw around statistics when it comes to the black community. We love to misconstrue data about poverty rates, crime rates, single-parent households. Here's the thing. If you really want to talk about problematic behavior In terms of statistics, we need to talk about white men. Most mass shootings in America, white men. School shootings, white men. Intimate partner violence, typically known as domestic violence, white men. Police brutality and systemic violence, white men. Online harassment and extremism, white men. Domestic terrorism, white men. Serial killers, white men. The demographic making up the vast majority of CEOs, judges, senators, and police chiefs who refuse to hold white men responsible, white men. And yet us white men are really talked about as being a problem. Few white people are asking, what's wrong with white men? What's wrong with the culture? Few white men are demanding that we be fixed. And why? Because we as white men humanize and individualize white violent offenders. And it's time to flip the script. To shame and blame, because I know white males are incredibly fragile when it comes to that, but instead to name what's really going on and who continues to be protected and not held accountable because of selective storytelling.
Growing up as a white person, you were taught that everything you do is rooted in merit. So all of these CEOs who have earned their positions, it's because they are truly the best qualified for the job. Sexism, racism, etc., none of that exists. And in fact, our country has completely healed from the time of the Civil War when white people had enslaved people based upon their race. So now everything is perfectly equal. And if you don't work hard, that is why you end up in the position that you end up with. Systemic inequalities aren't real. Police departments aren't racist. And in fact, if you do the right thing, you will always succeed and you will always have good things come to you. Sort of a just world hypothesis situation. You don't even learn about racism until you're 15 or 16. So in many ways, the knowledge of white people about racism, whether it's something they say or do or participate in unknowingly, it's about the knowledge of like a kindergartner. So that's why something that seems obvious to you or to other people who have grown up experiencing racism is not at all obvious to white people, which is why I make the content that I do, to encourage white people to be actively anti-racist and to stop doing these things that I call out in my videos.
I wish more white people knew about this. In the 1930s, the federal government made color-coded maps of neighborhoods. Green meant best, blue meant still pretty good, yellow meant declining, and red meant hazardous. Those red areas were outlined in red and became known as redlining. They were redlined not because of crime or poverty, but because black families lived there. That's the world Clyde Ross was born into. His father bought 40 acres of farmland in Mississippi. Owning land meant independence and stability for him and his family. Well, it was supposed to, but that threatened the white power structure. Local officials raised the taxes on the land. Clyde's father hired a lawyer to fight it, but the lawyer was in cahoots with the tax machine and took his money, but never showed up for court, so his land was taken away. Clyde moved to Chicago. He got married, started a family, worked hard and bought a house, but because of redlining, he couldn't get a regular mortgage. They wouldn't sell to black people, and black people could only buy in redlined districts, which meant the property was undervalued. He had to buy the house on contract, which was a mortgage scam kind of thing of the era, sort of like rent to own. It meant that you had to pay every month, and if you didn't pay, you lost your house, and you didn't get any equity, and you weren't building any wealth from buying your house, and you lived with the constant threat of eviction. Missing one payment meant you were out, and to top that off, this house was worth about $12,000, but he had to pay $27,000 to get it. So Clyde worked 3 jobs to keep that house. He said he barely got to know his children so that he could give them a house to live in. And he did it because he was a good, responsible man. But the wealth that house should have built never came. He couldn't pass it down like white families could because of all those years he was paying for the house and never getting any return on his investment. The system saw to that. Clyde Ross succeeded as well as the system would allow black people to succeed in that era But he should have had generational wealth to pass down to his kids. Redlining wasn't just about neighborhoods, it was about who gets to build wealth and who doesn't.
It's time to speak up. I have been involved in the criminal justice system since 1997. I've been a prosecutor and I've been a defense attorney. And if anyone out there thinks that our criminal justice system is blind to the race of the person in front of it, it's because you've had zero experience with the criminal justice system. I can tell you from personal experience that if my client that I'm representing is black or brown, I have to work twice as hard to make sure that their rights are protected. And even then, with all of the efforts, they generally get harsher sentences than a white client who is charged with the exact same thing. So all of you that are out there saying, well, there's more black arrests because they commit more of the crimes, shame on you. But thanks for at least letting your racism be on full display so we know who we're dealing with.
Organizations like the KKK and white supremacists decided that didn't get to exist. Places like Black Wall Street, Rosewood, multiple others were burned to the ground and everyone was killed. Anyone that survived, all of their information was burned inside their houses. When black people went to the banks to retrieve their money, to rebuild everything, the bank said, no, all of their bank cards have been burned. They couldn't get their money back. All of those banks still exist and still have all their money, and it's all accumulated wealth. White people from that particular time in that area were able to get their money back. This is why reparations are necessary to atone for our actions. We literally created poverty on purpose for multiple people.
The problem with racism in America is that too many white people believe it's simply about conscious hate, about burning crosses, slurs, or open hostility. But racism is much bigger, much deeper, and far more deceptive than that. Racism is not just a personal attitude, it's a system. A complex network of social, political, and economic levers and pulleys set up generations ago to keep working on behalf of white people, whether they're aware of it or not. This system operates like an autopilot of inequality. It doesn't need a racist person to function. It just needs the system to stay in place. Schools that favor certain zip codes, job markets that overlook certain names, police systems that criminalize certain skin tones, and court systems that excuse certain crimes. Racism is an insidious cultural disease. It doesn't care if you're a white person who claims to love black people. It will still find a way to infect how you see, judge, and treat people who don't look like you. It shows up in policies, in hiring decisions, in zoning laws, in neighborhood watch calls, and even in the quiet silence of those who claim neutrality while standing inside unjust systems. Yes, racism often looks like hate, but hate is just one symptom. It also looks like privilege, unearned advantages that white people inherit simply by existing in a world designed for them. It looks like access, the ability to move freely through systems that block others. And it looks like ignorance, the refusal to learn, to listen, to acknowledge that the playing field has never been equal. Even America's so-called fair systems carry the fingerprints of white supremacy. Look at fair housing alliances, equal opportunity programs, or even the justice system itself. Scratch the surface and you'll find the same pattern. White people create, fund, and control the very systems that claim to fix the problems they caused. They write the rules, enforce the rules, and then tell the oppressed to play by those rules. It's like a magician's trick, creating both the problem and the illusion of the solution. And nowhere is this hypocrisy clearer than in the white church. For centuries, churches and seminaries have tried to separate Christian identity from the violence committed against black people. They preach forgiveness and charity while standing silent on slavery, segregation, as if the gospel of Christ could coexist with the whip, the rope, and the burning cross. Don't talk about charity drives. The Ku Klux Klan had poor relief programs too, but that didn't make it any less of a terrorist organization. Church records from Klan meetings show dues, elections, and even charity work, all while spreading terror among black families. And, to this day, the white church still hasn't fully owned up to its role in sanctifying and protecting racial violence in America. This refusal to confront the violence embedded in America's religious institutions explains why every other form of violence, from mass shootings to police brutality, continues unchecked. You cannot build peace on top of unacknowledged terror. Then there's capitalism, which feeds off racism like a parasite. The cries for law and order and hard work are rarely about justice or morality. They're about protecting a thing-oriented society, not a people-oriented one. Capitalism turns human beings into profit margins and labor tools, dehumanizing those at the bottom, who, conveniently, are overwhelmingly black people. White supremacy and capitalism are twins, born of greed, sustained by fear, and justified by myths of superiority. You can't dismantle racism without also confronting the capitalistic spirit that measures worth by wealth instead of humanity. And that fear, that deep, centuries-old white fear, is the real heartbeat of racism. Fear of losing control, fear of equality, fear of accountability. From the plantation to the police station, that fear has been the fuel. It's why laws were written to limit black progress. It's why black neighborhoods are underfunded. It's why every black movement for justice is met with suspicion and backlash. This nation was built on a foundation of bias, bigotry, and control, and that indoctrination was handed down through generations. It's so ingrained that it feels normal, even to those who claim to reject racism. And yet, here we are in 2025, still fighting for equality in education, housing, healthcare, employment, and justice, the same battles our ancestors fought a century ago. So the real question is not why black people are still angry, but why white America is still comfortable. Why is it that wherever black people live, work, or rise, someone always has a problem with it? That problem isn't ours, it's theirs. Racism is not a black problem. It's a white problem that infects the entire society. Tell me what you think about this topic. Hope you find the information in this video informative. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. Thanks for watching.